Hey guys, thanks for joining me for this little session today. Pardon the background noise again. I'm recording this session because I just had a really great conversation with a potential client who was evaluating data warehouse automation tools, in particular the Jet Data Manager from Jet Reports. And one of the questions he had was, he said, Jay, I heard in a conference that data warehouse automation benefits developers by allowing you to iterate faster, gives you all of these great features. But one of the concerns we have is this idea of a black box where, I need to do something more sophisticated with my ETL, with my extract, transform, and load, but I'm unable to because, I can't get to the code. And I said, don't worry, that's not a problem. Jet Enterprise and data warehouse automation in general, yes, it builds upon Microsoft BI SQL Server, but you're still able to do a lot of the tools and techniques that you need to be able to do, especially as you start looking at more advanced concepts. The use case he was talking about was this idea of fuzzy lookups. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with fuzzy lookups allow you to correct free-form data or standardize away data's input or standardized data that has been inputted against reference data, or what we'll say is validated data. And the example we're going to look at today looks at role names. Now, actually, let me give credit where credit is due. I took this example from Knight's Microsoft SQL Server 2012 Integration Services 24-Hour Trainer book. And then, of course, I just modified it to meet my presentation needs. Now, the general gist of the story is I have here a list of customers, and I have their occupations as it was entered into a free-form text field in my ERP in nav. Now, the problem, of course, is you can see right away, I've got variations of how we're spelling district manager. Sometimes we spell it with MGR, period, and sometimes we actually spell it out. Now, in an ideal world, in order for me to analyze this data, I want them all to be the same. I want to have it match what we'll call reference data or fit within the domain or just be validated. These are all different ways of saying the same thing. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do that with what's called fuzzy lookups. Now, you can explore a couple different workflows. I'm going to use a workflow modified by, that I got out of this text. And the workflow that I'm going to follow is as follows. We're going to start by extracting the data from nav and drop it into our staging database. In our staging database, we're going to do all our transformations to prepare that data in a star schema that's fit for our data warehouse. And then as a very last step, before we load the data warehouse, we're going to send our data that requires data quality transformations. We're going to take that customer data and do our fuzzy lookups. And then we're going to take that data and load it into the data warehouse. Great. What does that look like? Okay. In terms of our project, in terms of data warehouse automation tool, instead of having just a staging and a data warehouse database, we're going to add a third database, an intermediate database called DQS, or what I've called DQS for data quality. And again, the workflow, how does the data flow? It's going to be pretty familiar. You'll start by extracting the data from nav, or whatever ERP is, and then you'll do all your conditional lookups or your transformations to start creating that star schema, right? All of these red fields are conditional lookups where I'm grabbing data from other tables. As I preview this data, we can see here, yep, straight out of nav, I've got this free-form text field where people type things in different ways. And I want to match that against the domain data, the reference data. And I'll do that matching process in my DQS database. So in my DQS database, I've got two tables. I've got a table called occupation. Here you can see the proper spellings for the different occupations. And then in my customer table, I've got some magic going on here. So all of these fields with the plus are straight data movements from the staging database. Straight data movements, basically what exists in nav. Then I've added a custom column called occupation ID and another custom column called fuzzy occupation certainty, and we'll talk about occupation name shortly. Okay, so I've got two custom columns that have no data movement. They're currently, if I were to preview, well, actually, that's not true. They're currently blank, yeah? Now, what I can do, though, is I can create custom code. I can say, you know what, these straight transformations aren't good enough for me. I need to use SSIS. I need to create a custom SSIS package for handling this data movement. And I borrowed, or straight up stole this recipe from the textbook I referenced earlier. And we can see here how we're going to do our fuzzy lookup. We start with the data extraction from the staging database. The first thing we care about is our first lookup. Now, in our first lookup, we do have to define what is the reference data. Again, what is the occupation table that has the standardized spellings for the occupation names. Now, where there's a one-for-one match between occupation name in the customer table and occupation name in the occupation table, just return the occupation ID. Or sorry, return the DW ID, return the surrogate key that identifies an occupation. If there is no match, we're going to send, goodness, I'm clicking all over the place. If there is no match, so if you don't match the spelling of the occupation in the two tables, and redirect the rows to a no match output. Okay, so when there is no match output, that's when we take a look at doing a fuzzy lookup. Now the setup is going to look exactly the same. You're still going to set your reference table. You're going to still set the common column, so again on occupation name. But fuzzy lookup is different because it has additional code that allows you to say, okay, what is the similarity between these two spellings or these two columns? And if there's a similarity, then just assume it's a match. So again, we can set our similarity threshold. We can set some delimiters. Okay. Then we're going to take the union. We're going to take the union of the stuff that had an instant match in the reference table. We're going to take the union of the data that has a match as per fuzzy lookup, and then we're going to toss it into our customer table in the DQS database, post fuzzy lookup, yeah? Now, of interest to us though, like I said, we had in our project, we had these two columns, occupation ID and fuzzy occupation certainty, that don't have a data movement from stage. Now, occupation ID is now populated thanks to the lookup and the fuzzy lookup. And the occupation certainty is a column that we're getting from fuzzy lookup that's based off of the similarity threshold. How certain are we that we've got a good match? Okay? So again, when I execute now, instead of just doing a straight load from stage, we're going to use SSIS in between to do our fuzzy lookups. Occupation ID and occupation certainty will be populated, and then as I go from raw to valid, we're pulling the matched name from the occupation table. What does that look like in SQL? Again, we're back to here. I've got my name. I've got the free-form occupation name that was in my staging database, that was in nav. I've got the fuzzy occupation name, which is the match that we did in our lookups through SSIS. And then I've got that certainty here. How certain are we that we have a good match? I think the last follow-up step we need is to say, okay, if it's over XYZ% match, 75% match, 65% match, don't worry about it, we're happy with the match. However, if it falls below a certain threshold, 50%, 33%, then we should have a report that comes up on somebody's desk and we manually validate, yeah, this spelling is a good match. Look here, right? I have a 65% match on region manager versus regional manager. Of course that's a good match. So somewhere I should capture the fact that, yes, this is a good match, and then we don't have to go through that manual validation for the next row. Or the next time we have another instance where somebody typed it in as just region manager. the final step then would be to say, okay, fine, I'm going to take this table and move it into the data warehouse. It's passed all of my data quality stuff, and we're happy with it. So that's the end of the story. We were taking a look at using SSIS and fuzzy lookups within or in tandem with our data warehouse automation tool. Again, the big sell, or why are we so excited about the data warehouse automation, is it benefits developers. It says, here's the boring stuff that I can just generate, and it's easy and straightforward, not a lot of thought required. And then when we have to get into more sophisticated things like doing a fuzzy lookup, with the Jet Data Manager server, with Jet Enterprise, this automation tool is not a black box. The code is exposed. The code is manipulatable in SSIS and Visual Studio, and we can go forward with doing those sophisticated things with our data. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My name is Jay Wilson. You can reach me at jae@onyxreporting.com. Thanks so much for your attendance, guys. Catch you later. Cheers. Bye.